Hello, all. Welcome back to another episode of Koot podcast series. This is Shankar. I am the founder of Koot and going to be the host for today's episode. We are at a really interesting moment in the AI journey. Over the last year, the AI agents have gone from a buzzword to a boardroom priority. Every large enterprises, they are trying to prioritize how AI agents can change their workflows, help them in productivity improvement, and also in helping them in faster decision makings. But with so many possibilities of AI agents, the one big question keep cropping up is how do you move from a experimentation to real impact? How do you pick the right use cases and then design possibility as well as even put it in the large complex organizations, right? And to discuss this exactly, we have a veteran, Miss Koyelia Ghosh Roy, who has been there, done that, and who has created multiple AI agents and scaled them with very complex and diversified organizations across the globe. To tell a little bit about Ms. Koyelia, Koyelia is the senior person within EXL, is a service company, and she is the associate vice president of enterprise data and AI product leadership at EXL. She has defined the EXL's enterprise-wide AI and BA strategy. She has done multiple initiatives which has reduced 30% lift in productivity, 35% reduction reporting latency, as well as 40% in engagement through AI-powered analytics. And beyond these accumulates within EXL, she also did various AI products, conversational AI, BI, as well as even CFO Co-Pilot, which has brought a lot of accolades within the industry. She has been recognized as a leader by 3A Pinnacle Award, and she has also been listed as one of the 100 AI thought leaders by 3AI in the list of AI Makers 100 in 2025. She has also been winner of Women in Cloud Roles model in data management. So we are happy and excited to have a conversation with Koyelia. So welcome, Koyelia, to our podcast.
Thank you so much, Shankar. I'm so much humbled by your really wonderful introduction. But at heart, I am a thinker who loves to innovate and try out new technologies and also give back to community because that's how we share and we grow. So thank you so much for having me in this podcast. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks a lot, Koyelia. I'm sure I'm going to learn a lot from you. I'm sure our audience also. So I made a very brief introduction about you, Koyelia, but we would love to know more about you from your professional journey, how it started, and so that would be really the starting point.
Sure. So I will just, not bore the audience, but I'll give a very short snippet. So I bring 20 years of experience of designing and scaling enterprise-grade data and AI solutions across insurance, F&A, healthcare, and procurement domain. I've led generative AI, traditional AI, and obviously data-driven platform programs, delivering, you already mentioned 40% of cost savings and real-time decisioning at global scale. I'm absolutely passionate about building resilient, trusted, and compliant data and AI platforms. And how I can enable this AI based solutions with confidence is what is always been my focus point. So simplifying simplifying complex problems through data and AI is what always makes me excited. And as a global speaker and a GenAI hackathon mentor, and also a data and AI practitioner, I bridge this technical innovation, right, with business outcomes. So I bring the cross-functional leadership, platform vision, and a P&L awareness at every initiative that I am involved with. So that's a small summary of what I do and love to do.
Sure, Coelia. Coelia, I think AI is a buzzword we all know, right? But we would like to understand very simply from. Could you give one or two examples of a AI agent project which you have implemented, right? I think it need not be okay. So to our audience also, though we will refer to Coelia as working in EXL, but the conversation is not restricted only to the organization, but as a thought leader, she has a ringside view of what is happening in the industry, right? So the question is not again not restricted to Excel, but in your knowledge, Koelia, could you give few examples of the AI agents being deployed at a large enterprise, and how is it really shaping up?
So obviously, I mean, this 2025 is the era for AI agents and agentic AI solutions, and there are across the industry. There is a lot of vibe, hype, all of it is going on across the agentic AI, and it starts from not just from coding, but also from business domain specific solutions as well as on workflows. So generic workflows that are also getting enabled through the agentic AI. But one thing that we need to understand is the difference of agentic AI with that of traditional agentic AI traditional automation solutions. Okay, so what we have to understand and hear is that traditional automation were for automating repetitive tasks, but that of in here, when you talk of agentic AI, it is not about repetitive tasks. It is about handling the exception. The opportunity here is exceptions. How much are we able to offload the cognitive load that human experts have to bring in these exceptional situations? That's where agentic AI's real value lies. How much are we able to free the experts' time and bring in automated real time updates of the learning curve of these agents? That is the second area that what we need to now bring in. So the two things, it's do not start with simple automation and try to replace with agentic AI. Then that's not your not at all the return on investment that you will get. You'll get return on investments when we do an exceptional cases where we have a huge productivity saving of human experts cognitive load and the learning curve of the agents being reduced by 50 to 60%. So that's where the real power of agentic AI lies.
Sure, Koelia. Could you give me example of a successful deployment with any large company? I think again I repeat, is need not be restricted only to Excel, but even any genre.
Absolutely. So when we are deploying a solution into the production, right? The first thing is how are we framing it? It's not just okay. This is a solution. Now go ahead and go and do agentic AI solution. That is a complete call for failure. It is important that we use structured priority frameworks to define if we should go ahead with agentic AI or simple AI agents or just generative AI models or even traditional automation solutions around it. Because not all all problems require generative AI, not all problems require agentic AI, right? So first is select the framework on which you will be deciding which use case to pick and why. So one of those frameworks are the RICE A framework, which is your reach, impact, confidence, effort, and AI complexity. Now, this framework helps you balance quick wins with strategic bets, and it also enables you to chase, don't chase hype use cases, but actually focus on the practical ones. Once you have identified which are the use cases that really requires the kind of solution, and here in this case we are actually talking about agentic AI, right? So when we have identified that this is agentic AI, the first is do not always focus on success cases. The most important is to prepare for failure cases first. How do we recover from failure fast, at the same time do not impact the trust of users on the system? Third is how do I make it more compliant? Now, traditional compliance protocols are not designed to handle these agentic AI solutions. They become more like bottlenecks than enablers. So, bringing in compliance in design, governance within the design, within the architecture, and not as a bolt-on. That's the second part of it. That how do I make the solution such that my governance is inbuilt already built within it, and hence when we release it, it does not get delayed because of compliance issues, but it can 3x times get scaled much more faster because the governance is already inbuilt there. So embed the governance architecture is the most important part. And then comes finally is your designing of your agentic AI solution. Now, agentic AI do not fail because it is the logic of the agent. It is not so. It fails in the handoffs, in the integration points. So managing those areas, like how do I manage the handoffs such that it does not fail, is very important. Now, how do I do that? We have to do it by understanding what are my edge cases, what are my areas that I need to focus on. So, for example, my context. Okay, so normally what happen agentic AIs, they focus only on the immediate next steps, and they tend to forget the overall overarching global goals. So how do I constantly in get my context into my agentic AI solution? How do I manage the integration points such that it does not fail, like API calls and integration with ERP or SAP, right? How do I think it that it does not fail at that time? So, which is called hand of blindness, right? So, how do I manage the hand of blindness? Then comes your myopia. There's a planning myopia. The agents, as I mentioned, right, they tend to always optimize the immediate next step, and they forget about the constraints, the cumulative cost, and they lead to globally suboptimal behavior. While in the next task, they might be doing fine, right? So, how do I make this that I have a bounded planning where I have got explicit cost limits, I got loop detection and human checkpoints for high stake decisions, such that the solution becomes successful. And most importantly, as I mentioned, context degradation control. And the context degradation means it's a progressive loss or a corruption of the critical information, integral information that you have, on which the AI agent operates, right, across multi interactions. Which then what happens is that once the context is broken, so in multi-turn conversations or cross-system workflows, which is the most important part in agentic AI, where you have multiple agents working across multiple workflows, the context loss is quite natural. So managing that is extremely important in your success matrices. So persistent context stores with conversational trading and explicit context validation at every step is an important design consideration that needs to be taken. And as I mentioned, right, the tool integration using MCPs, model context protocols, agent native AI, API wrappers, these are extremely important for your standardized error handling, automatic retries, and fallback data sources. One which is also coming up is the explainability and the observability. It has to be auditable. It cannot be a black box because auditable solutions enables you not only to be compliant but also enable it to further enhance. And then the model drifting. Now that's a very critical element. Models keep drifting, and having observability and continuously monitoring it is another very important point to prevent this failures of agentic AI. So failure first design patterns is what is important before you actually start measuring the success. And frameworks like RISE A enables you to identify how much you should do, how much confidence you have, and then discuss with the business. So the business is aware what business value they will get. Technical people are aware what are the constraints. Senior leadership is aware what is the cost of building and maintaining it. And then finally, reach is whether my users will actually use it and find value out of it or not.
Got it. Thanks a lot for the detailed overview, Koyelia. But probably I would, my nagging question is, there are so many experimentations it's going on, right? We would really like to understand few examples which are really hit the roof, right? Which has really gone full, production full and, able to say. So without naming the company, could you give one or two examples, Koyelia? I think if it is fine with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, solutions like CFO Co-Pilots, right, where you have one is your income statements and summarization and narratives that you have to do. The second is a comparative intelligence that a CFO might want to see, right, with the competitors. So the other one is earning calls summarization, and then preparing for the earning calls, like understanding what the analysts have asked to the competitors, so that we are better prepared to answer their questions, right? So these are some common elements that are there for any financial services solutions which agentic AI based. Now, what happens here is that you have one main agent which understands the intents, identify the entities, and then calls the respective sub agents and then perform the tasks, and then it gives it to the critic agent, which then understands whether it is actually contextual or not, then summarizes the information to build natural language information, and then bring it to the users, right? Now, if the master agent has to identify the intent and then pass it to the respective sub agents. In real world, it's not that simple to understand the intent. In the real world, for example, if if a user is asking, okay, I need the income statement of this company. This is fairly simple. Go ahead. But that is not a question anybody asks, right? They say, I want to analyze the profitability of such and such company with such and such company. Now, profitability is there in multiple sub agents. How will the main agent now understand? The confidence scoring, of course, confidence score is, of course, they have to identify has the highest confidence, and there's a threshold limit as well. But then we realize that it does not always, the highest confidence doesn't always meet the business needs. So it is important that we have a business context layer also, and not completely rely on the agent trainings itself. And this business context layer cannot be an integral part of the training as well. It has to be a separate module that is referred, because the business rule
Yeah.
keeps getting changed, right? So parameterizing the business context layer and connecting it as a module, as a separate module, so that it that model does not need to be retrained every time. Its basic training is still there, but it gets contextualized to the business through that business context layer. And that context layer then can still be updated as and when required. So that's how the main agent now can understand with that context where I need to go. The second part is comes in your handoffs. Okay, during handoff there has to be a complete bound because there's infinite loops. Agentic AI, most of the issues that we found, it goes to infinite loops. It keeps going back and forth, and it adds up to the cost of maintaining such solutions. So having boundaries of how many loops it should have, how where it should fall back, what are the fallback options for it, and then constantly reminding it of the context of it. So that is another important part, because if my sub agents keep in loops, it's not going to happen. Third is obviously with respect to accuracy, latency, and adoption. These are my business KPIs, which we have to follow. But most of the time in agentic AI, that is not the only metric. The other metric is also the agent's health. And by the agent's health, I mean the operational matrices, like what is the cost of maintenance, how I define the loops, how I make the responses faster, how do I prevent from it to generate more technical debt, like for example codes. How do I prevent my code agents to prevent from technical debt? So if they keep building more and more, more and more, unnecessary code was not required. So these are some of the elements that if we keep in mind, that helps us to make our agentic solutions much more smarter and budget friendly too.
Fantastic, fantastic, Koyelia. So, no, probably as I was giving the introduction, Koyelia, right? There are so many, plenty of opportunities to create an AI agent, right? For every processes we can think of, right? From HR, finance to supply chain, whatever, whichever the process. So, and as a EXL is a service organization, you are now giving service to various different industries, and so how do you really think, hey, for this, for example, for a particular client, which is the process we can automate through an agent, right? Is there any framework you go through saying that, hey, this is the, I think, the low hanging fruit or the least resistance where we can really create an AI agent which can have an impact, right? So is there any thoughts you have? How do you really approach it?
Yeah, so I mentioned RISE A framework, right? So that's the
Okay,
framework is one of the most common and well-established frameworks that we have, which is, and there's also this product map that we have, which we also follow. It's also a very a very management centric uh, already a framework that is there, which enables you to identify which product or which solution we should first go with. Okay, and how do we do? I clearly mentioned we have to bring agentic AI where traditional automation cannot work.
got it, got it,
High value targets. Okay, we have to make high value targets, whereas exceptions where human expertise is most valuable and is most expensive.
got
Then we also have to have a measurable impact, like a reduction in escalation time, expert workload, resolution cycles. These are the areas. And then natural expansion path planning. So success with one exception type creates a template for other exceptions as well. So the scaling becomes faster and it also brings us trust of the stakeholders as well.
got
So
it.
this so exception resolution rate, expert time recovery, decision quality score. Above 90% of agent decisions are supposed to be appropriate by domain experts. Then only the solution becomes a really successful solution. And then the learning acceleration, very important, as I mentioned, right? It is from measuring the impact. It is not just accuracy, latency, and adoption. It is also the agent's health. And the learning acceleration provides a very important parameter, which is how do we handle new exception types, but with fewer trading examples with every new exception resolution it solves. So the bottom line here is we have to prove that the agentic AI value is by solving problems that keep their stakeholders best people. That they are actually their time, which was going into reactive firefighting, will now be going into proactive innovation. So we target complexity, not simplicity, because that's where the economic leverage lies.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I think I'm able to connect the dots now, right? So Koyelia, I will no now we have budget for AI, right? I think almost all the organizations want to experiment and want to make a, but what are the resistance now you see with the enterprises in going full blown? I think I would still ask why we are not able to see far more complex success case studies, right? I think you mentioned about the what is it, the investor calls. Or I think I would still say it's still in the periphery, right? It's not a supply chain. It is not customer engagement where you are dealing with hundreds of data sets and a very highly complicated. I understand it will take a few quarters or so, but my question is two prong. One is what are the resistance internally with the enterprises when it comes to AI even today, right? And number two, what are the problems you see in the implementation of these projects? Yeah, I hope I'm
So,
clear.
yeah, absolutely. So the first point that you mentioned here is that is it only with because I just gave the CFO co-pilot examples, right? But I'd like to tell you that the biggest agentic AI use cases is in the customer services, like collections, then your issue resolutions, ticket resolutions. This is where the agentic AI getting mostly deployed
Got it.
because they are the ones who can and the flow is such that only escalated cases goes to the human. Otherwise it is out of the 100% cases, I think customer service is actually getting the maximum traction for agentic AI solutions, and it is providing a lot of value. Now, however, when you mention, right, what are the issues that one is facing when implementing it? One, of course, is requirements. Now, it is not a magic box. Now, just mentioning, okay, we need this solution to be the collection service to be completely automated and completely through agentic AI, and even complex cases should be able to be handled by that. Now, we need to make it more systematic and from ambiguity, make it more structured. So, how do we then do it? So, we need to then translate the request into triggers, like, okay, what triggers it? So, when it should run. Then is inputs. So are they structured, unstructured data? What are my inputs for it? What are my data sources for it? What are my integration points for it? What APIs do I need to call? What are limitations of the APIs? Then my decision logics. How much is business context layer? How much should I actually use my domain learnings? Should I even use OEM based LLMs as well? Should I use SLMs or LLMs? Because you don't need LLMs for everything. You can also use SLMs as well, especially for agentic AI. SLMs are supposed to be the best choices because the the memory and the action that they do is very focused. So SLMs becomes more cost effective as well, and the accuracy also increases. However, you need to go to LLMs where your context window is larger. So for like summarization of medical documents and analysis of medical documents or legal documents, that's where you have to go with reasoning models with large LLMs with large context windows. So that is this is a logic, right? So one is the business context layer logic. There is the kind of models that you need to use. Then the kind of agentic architecture that you need to use, whether it should be A to A, whether I can do with this MCP. So all these information also comes into play. And then defining the outputs. So I mentioned, right, an intent, entity, agents, LLMs, actions, summarizations, and then the outcomes. So the outcomes could be giving an alert to. So for example, it is very much used in our daily cybersecurity, where threats comes as alerts, and it is the agents who are identifying the threats because it's humongous for a human to do it, and there's always been gaps. So with the agentic AI solution coming in, this is completely automated, and these agents can immediately send alerts to the humans when required, right? It can take actions as well to do some remediations and then call the humans. So these are very common use cases that's coming and are really becoming successful as well. And finally, guardrails. The guardrails are extremely important. There were exceptions, with escalations, and also preventing poisonous prompt injections. So these enables you to prevent the magic box expectations, right, and give you measurable outcomes. And then comes the design. I think I've done a lot on design, so I'll just keep on the KPIs part, right? And from the KPIs, as I mentioned, the adoption, cycle time reduction, dollar saved, other business KPIs, latencies. These are my business KPIs. And the second becomes my AI safety KPIs, which is my hallucination. What is my hallucination rate? How percentage I'm reducing with every experience, with every iteration my agents are running, the fairness score, the explainability score, and my accuracy respect to my context. So I might be accurate standalone, but is it contextual to the ask? So that's how I think we should go ahead. The best way is to apply a minimum viable agent concept. In a 30 days, go ahead with a minimal viable agent and focus on the exception handling case, as I mentioned. So if I have an agent that autonomously resolves the messy, ambiguous edge cases, which the traditional workflows cannot do, I think that's where we prove the value to the stakeholders, right? So instead of automating well-defined process, target only the 20% scenarios, which is outside of SOPs, and but consumes 80% of the human cognitive load. And that's the case that is happening, right? Why agentic AI came in, the traditional automation working fine. It came in because my human cognitive load was still high. So these are very high value, low frequency situations where traditional automation fails, human expertise becomes a bottleneck, and these are becomes my best use cases for agentic AI solutions.
Got it, Koyelia. Got it. Well said, right? One we discussed in depth about the technically how do you really approach an AI agent, right? But when it comes to dealing with humans, right? I think sometimes they become the bottleneck, right? I think we in the previous question I said that though we have budgets, but what are the other challenges you see, Koelia, beyond technical, right? I think whatever you mentioned, how you approach with respect to human resistance, how do you see? Do you see that it's going away, or do you see that? Could you throw some light?
Important here is that is the boundary of autonomous decisions. When agentic AI solutions are implemented, it is important we define which decisions would be taken by the agents and which decisions would be taken by humans. Once this clarity is established, that enables to reduce the human resistance because the human now knows what their roles are. Trust me, this ambiguity of how much the agent will do and how much the humans will do, that creates a rift, the entire resistance to the solution. So clarity of the boundaries of the agent's actions is important. The second is also when we are training it. So we also need to implement an escalation intelligence. Now, how the escalation intelligence comes? So here the human expertise comes in, right? Where the human expertise will be able to train the agents, like where it is uncertain and it should be brought to the human. That is another way where we bring the stakeholders, the team, the users into the entire development. When they become a part of the agentic care solutions, then it is not eliminating them, it is building with them. So that makes a lot of difference, building with them. Then this learning loops that they have with each resolved exceptions, right? The agent decision making capability improves. But this resolved exceptions has to be monitored and validated by the human experts. And this has to be evolving. It cannot be static. This is not one time done and forget about it. No, it's not. It's evolving every day. So humans' expertise in getting this learning loops, enhancing this learning loops is always will be there. So again, the core cognitive expertise of humans is the center of the agentic care development. The more we can emphasize this, the more the resistance will go. All these vibes and all this news that we hear that customer service, got automated and people got dropped and all that, one has to see below what is getting published by media. It is not always that they got eliminated because of agentic AI. Every human has got a cognitive power, and being part of this agentic AI only enables them to be relevant and continue in this services. So that's my take into it.
Sure, sure, Koyle. I think got it. A very different perspective, right? So you also mentioned about defining what an agent will do, what a human will do, right? So that's a very complicated dance, right? Because always the expectation is moon, right? I think just I will put a agent which will do all the magic, everything will be done it by it, right? And educating that also it's not an easy, and even from a technology perspective or from EXL or even any other company perspective, you are also keep evaluating, right? I think whatever you are defining today is not written on the stone. It is probably in a month it the boundary keep pushing. So how do you really go and say that hey, this is how it's going to happen, right? For example, you're taking a 3-year project or even 2-year project, right, of an AI agent. So the boundary or the definition is going to keep shifting. So how do you define these two components, right? The human as well as the agent interaction, and how do you measure that as a no, means how do you mention that as a failure of an agent or a failure of a human, and how do you go about it?
Excellent question, I have to say. So the way we have to do is by measuring the autonomous decision quality. So we have to track the resolution accuracy for complex scenarios. And we should have the target as 80 to 85% appropriate decisions. It should be
Sure.
taken by the agent. Only then you know that the agent is performing correct. End-to-end log of the actions taken by the agent to arrive at a decision, at that decision has to be maintained so that it is auditable and it could be explained. So that's the next part. Then hours of experts' time freed from doing this monotonous escalation handling to strategic work. Okay, so we now see our people are overloaded with work, right? And with agentic AI, the point here is that how do I get my escalations controlled and get my team to innovate? Because now it's no longer a monopoly kind of thing. Big consulting firms are at threat because of this agentic AI. Startups are really become threats to big multinational companies. Why? Because it is democratized. The power is democratized. Hence, having this measurement of autonomous solutions and defining, okay, out of my this many decisions, these are my areas where it could impact my reputation, where my customer experience would be highly damaged, where my stock prices can get an impact. These are the three high risk cases that we need to focus, and we have to make sure that it goes through a human judgment. Even developing financial reports for street reporting or for governance reporting or your standard reporting that we have, that also has to go through human expertise. So these are clear cut examples where humans have to be involved. And remaining rest is what I mentioned, right? Measure the cognitive offloads that we are doing. What is how quickly the agent is able to improve and learn new exception cases on which they were not trained at all. How quickly they can do that. And then what is the resolution speed that we have? Like if it is 60 to 90% faster in handling complex cases, then it makes sense. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, yes, Koyelia, got it, got it. So, Koyelia, you also, when you are talking, answering one of the previous questions, you mentioned, we need to really gear up for the failure, more than the success. But could you tell in your example, which is a AI agent means I think it's not only you implemented, at least you come to know where either it became rogue or the performance is not really up to the mark, and how did you handle it? Or did you roll back? Any interesting examples? We
Yeah,
discussed multiple
absolutely.
times about the successful case study, but would I also like to discuss some failures?
I think in agentic AI, in fact, from GenAI solutions, then to AI agents and then to agentic AI, rollbacks is, I think, is a typical thing that happens. It is very difficult to get it right the first time because it's evolving. And every month we know a new model is coming up with new frameworks. My costs are reducing. My time of working on it gets reduced. Accuracy reduces. My context window goes ups and down. So these are a constant factor. So one is by the capability with my industry is evolving continuously. The second is it is not predictable. No matter how much I train, it is not that predictable. So, for example, if I know, if, so a human cognitive is also that, right? So they, from expertise, from experience, they gain, and then they go ahead and do it. So similarly, in here, an agent just immediately getting in will may not get it right the first time. And I have also faced in 2024, 2023 we started working on GenAI and, and we built data agents at that time. We did not even know that it was called data agents. We only came to know once the other companies is actually became a term as data agent. And in 2024, when we full-fledged launched the solution, and the latency was overkilling. The responses context was not being maintained all the time, and the latency was quite high because people were expecting calculations because financial information requires calculations, comparisons, and then bringing up the information. But they were expecting responses like that of ChatGPT. So the expectations, matching the expectations is a very important thing to really set the expectations. But here, ChatGPT had set expectations something different. People were not realizing that ChatGPT, if you give a financial document, will also take the same amount of time as other solutions will take, right? So in that such cases, we had to roll it back, and we had to think, how do we meet expectations now? So then the solutions, the architecture came into play, right? So obviously we had a very microservice-based architecture where a parameterized, parameterized all our important variables. So that helps us to quickly scale it up. But then thinking through, okay, if I have to meet accuracy with high performance, I have to have a mixture of small language models and large language models. Straight answers should be through small language models. Complex answers should be through large language models. These are my responses that can come through caches. These which cannot come through caches. These responses can be generated as a batch and then stored. While these cannot be done and this has to be processed as real time, and yes, it will take time. Bringing the stakeholders into the design, into the development constantly so that they understand the nuances as well. And then they become our ambassadors, right? To the other stakeholders who can speak about it and make them understand. So that's the way every solution matures and grows. Hence, I mentioned, right? Okay, when we exception first is very important. You fail, you should have a fallback. If you have to bring the latest, you have to constantly interact with the stakeholders to understand what will work and what will not.
Fantastic, Koyelia. Fantastic experience to really learn from. I think you built about the CFO Co-Pilot, right? I think that's what multiple times I'm hearing the financial statements and other things. It bring back my memory when I was an analyst with an investment bank, right? So what is a kind of, you have any aha moment or any eureka moment when you are doing these kind of projects, Koyelia? Or is it boring, like, keep going on a slow pace? Uh,
Firstly, agentic AI solutions are never boring. They are the most exciting and the most interesting thing. It keeps you alive. It helps you to innovate, and innovate is something that I'm very passionate about. It keeps you trying new things. So I'm sorry to cut you, but I just want to let you know it's never a bore. The second is that aha moment is when I said, right, we had to roll it back because it was not meeting the expectations. So some of the responses were not coming right, some of the contexts were not right. And we realized the first thing is that we brought in the business context layer, right? We strengthened the business context layer. So it understands, okay, what needs given higher priority, even though it, as per the learning, it comes to be the same confidence level. The second thing that we thought about is how do I make my solution within the stakeholders teams, which I already told you. And the aha moment came in when the business users no longer went to the data, it's my team only, but yeah, the data analytics team to ask for reports or download reports or even to the finance team for reports. But they went into the solution in natural language, queried the requirements, and they got the responses in a structured format with narratives that fulfilled their needs. So we enable real time decision making. So that was the aha moment for us. Getting their trust, regaining their trust, and making it impactful from a business value perspective.
Really, it's aha, right? I would really say. Okay, a different angle, right? I think every business now need the AI agents to be deployed in in a second or so. They know their expectation of the speed is very different. But you also mentioned about the guardrails, right? I think because you need to ensure the quality to so on. So how do you balance these two, right? I think not an easy answer, but no, how do you really balance these two? uh, yeah, speed versus quality or the governance.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, right, embed governance in design because that helps you to make it the engine for the speed. That's one. It is not a bolt on, it has to be built in.
Okay.
Okay. Second is adoption of the failure for design patterns, as I mentioned very clearly. This is very
Yeah.
important. So we need to understand what breaks the circuit of maintenance.
Okay.
So unlike traditional circuit breakers, right, which by system-based issues, agent-specific patterns monitor the semantic failures. Like, are my decision quality grading over time?
Okay.
I have I implemented a graduated responses like reduce autonomy when there is ambiguities before we fully shut it down. Like if we are saying that I do not know the answer, I have a graduated response. Then constantly monitoring the cross agent communications because more and more multi-agent systems coming into play. The other one is the context preservation architecture, global context preservation architecture. Agents can't recover their lost conversation state. So we have to build the immutable context logging with rollback capabilities. So every agent decision gets logged with full context. The state snapshots are taken at handoff points. Recovery protocols are set up to restore the conversation threads. So these are some of the examples of a context preservation architecture. Most important is having a graceful degradation hierarchy. So what I mean by graceful degradation hierarchy is that making the agent aware. Okay, so level one, full autonomy with all tools. Level two is limited tools and human approvals required. Level three is information mode and no actions. And level four is escalate to humans immediately. So when we start deploying, it normally starts with information only mode, no actions. Third comes escalate to human immediately. Then comes your limited tools, human approval required. And final level one, which is full autonomy with all tools, obviously with guardrails. So when we deploy, we do not deploy fully autonomous. We have to go gradually. So that's called our graduated capability. Okay. Composite health of the agents across the multiple dimensions is extremely important to be monitored. So what I mean by composite health of agents is the semantic coherence. Are the responses making sense? And continuously monitoring them. Then the tool's effectiveness. So are my API calls succeeding meaningfully? Am I able to do it correctly? Am I having too much timeouts? What are my fallback options? Then I keep repeating context retention, but that is the core for agentic AI. So is my conversation flow maintained? Is the context maintained? Most important is the goal alignment. Is the agent staying on task or not? So when we start with implementation strategy for enterprise, we start with failure injections. So we deploy agents with failure simulations from day one, like simulate API timeouts and malform responses, and see how the agent's reacting. We have to test context loss scenarios. Then we inject conflicting information to test the reasoning. Then we measure the recovery time and the accuracy. Then the other one comes is the observability. Traditional monitoring fails because it just tracks system health, right? It does not track the agent intelligence. We have to monitor the decision rationale and not just the outcomes of the agents. We have to track the semantic drift in agent responses. We have to work on alerts on reasoning pattern changes. Reasoning pattern changes, there's a model drift that happens, right? And we have to alert immediately when it happens. The long conversation flows that happens, right? We have to have a log of them for failure analysis. And that's where we can go ahead and do it. So if you have to do a progressive deployment plan, I would suggest that we do it with increasing autonomy levels, which I already told you, right? Simple actions with human confirmations, then decisions with audit trails, and then finally full autonomy with fallback protocols.
Yeah, I think very detailed answer, Koyelia. I'm sure some of the audience, if they're from technical side, I'm sure they will find it highly, useful. So, Koyelia, you mentioned about the startups which are completely now disrupting the large organizations, right? So, but do you also use, any of the startups, SaaS products, AI products in when you deploy? So how do you go about it?
So yeah, of course, we are partner with startups also, and we have partners with big OEMs also. So depending on the use cases, we do use products and specialized niche products of companies where it's applicable, and where it's applicable, we go with the OEM product. So there's a mixture of both.
Any good case without naming again, where you say that you worked with a a startup, and what a startup brings into the table, or even if I put it, because there are so many, in our network, there are so many people might be watching from the startup, fraternity. So how should they think about when they think about, putting in an enterprise grade deployment?
Yeah, so enterprise grade deployment, I mentioned 3 points has to be there, right? One is they have to be completely explainable and cost predictability. These two has to be absolutely there. And the third one is obviously the agent's design. The agent design has to be scalable and modular. Okay. Now, normally, companies like Excel, we are domain centric. So we believe in solutions that are not domain specific. Like, for example, if I am working in insurance, I know what insurance does, but a
Okay.
solution that caters to the insurance industry but requires the domain knowledge is
Okay.
a very good match, right, for any such organizations. So those which have got specific USPs, like for example, conversational solution,
Got it.
right, or a vision solution, right? Now, vision solutions are also coming in. They are expert in that niche. They're solution expert in niche, but they do not have the domain expertise. So that combination becomes a killer combination.
Got it.
So that's
So,
how it works.
okay, got it. You see, you want probably someone who's a horizontal or not a very vertical or domain specific. For example, infra play could be the good, DevOps or FinOps. Those are also good examples, Koyelia.
So I would just take a step back. DevOps, infra, FinOps, these are very high risk
Okay,
stakes for companies, right? So for these, normally companies believe in large players,
got it.
like OEMs and all. But for specific niche solutions like
Okay,
voice agents, or your twins, digital twins,
okay,
or your customer experience solutions, right? So these are very specific solutions which are very niche in itself. So they add a lot of value to services company, which have got a lot of domain expertise, because then both can become symbiotic to each other.
got it, Koyelia. Definitely, it'll be helpful for the our startup audience. So moving little from the technical side, all right? So the AI, I think obviously the RPAs or the automations are there for ages, but the AI is a recent phenomenon rather than the last 3 years or so. So when it comes to the talent, how do you, expect the people to shift to the new, requirement, right? Which is not easy. And probably the second question I would ask is, when it comes to the freshers, right? What do you expect them to learn, right? Is it, beyond the technical thing? Do you expect them to have some domain expertise? How can they get a job in this tough market, Koelia?
Freshers are not always technical freshers we're talking about. They're also um, civic freshers we're also talking about, like biotech biotech freshers and all, right? So they become my domain experts, and tech freshers becomes more from my building solutions. So working with AI and working on AI, right? Two different things, right? And you need both people working with AI and working on AI. For freshers, I would say that understanding the core of their subject is very important, because that is what going to make differentiate them from others. For example, if it is a coding agent, one needs to understand the code first to understand what technical depth the coding agent is adding, right? Or when it's going in loops. So that's one. So that's why the freshers need to bring in. And From a domain fresher's perspective, understanding, okay, what are the nuances of my domain, where exactly the expertise kicks in. So if I have to do a pharmacy case and I know the mixture requires this ml of quantity, that's easy. But what if I have to do an experiment and I have to identify what quantity I should do and how should I do it? How should I increase the mgs, right? How to increase the quantity so that now the right mixture is getting created. So those becomes for a fresher who is working now, understanding if they understand the core of the subject. So basically, not trying to just get good grades, but getting into the subject in real and see what are the practical applications of those subjects is what is important currently.
Good guidance, Koyelia. So I know we are almost kind of close to our scheduled time. I didn't even realize. I know that I know we are close to the time. Probably last couple of questions, Koyelia, is you're a thought leader, right? You're able to. You're there in the industry for a long time. You're able to see what's going. So what do you? How do you think that this AI agent will become in 2 3 years? Even 2 3 years is a such a long time, the fast evolving place. But how do you think, right, whether AGX will be reality? What is your take, Koelia?
I think the agents were agentic. See, first it was Gen AI, then it became AI agents, then became agentic AI. Now there will be vision and all image AI. I mean, vision, especially visions. Vision AI is coming really, and then there's also getting into the entertainment media industry as well, quite a big time. And I think this will keep evolving, and it will keep. It is. I don't think it's a bubble. It might be to some extent because of the hype, but this is real. This this will stay. The agentic AI will stay. The agentic AI will evolve into much better, perhaps, in going forward, right? With all the new technologies that's coming up, blockchain is one of the most important thing that it will combine with and bring in more secure transactions, which currently is still not being that well managed, right? So the security of each transactions will happen. Perhaps the deepfakes will get controlled with when the agentic AI can get integrated with blockchain concepts. And I think the way, obviously, everybody knows about super intelligence system, and everybody's talking about a super intelligence system will come in the next 5 to 6 years, is what big companies, all the CEOs are predicting. But having said all of these, I think it's a human's cognitive power which is leading to these. And we ourselves have to evolve ourselves to be more innovative than trying to be more repetitive. Because initially started with doing repetitive works, then it became automation and escalations. Then escalations will also be now automated. So we have to be innovative, and it is innovation that brought this agentic AI. It didn't get automatically done, right? It's human cognitive power brought it agentic AI. So everything, the blockchain is also by humans only. Integrating them will also be done by us. So I think it is more evolving to become an orchestrator of ecosystems, of the various ecosystems, and it is about storytelling at a board level to understand what the innovation brings. All the startups that we're looking at is also innovations and what they're actually good at. So as we evolve, it will be a blend of product strategy, compliance leadership, and change management. Change management is going to be a big deal here.
Got it, Koelia. It looks like a cat and mouse game. The AI itself will give more deepfake videos, but that itself can control the deepfake videos by the way you are saying the blockchain and other things. Interesting. Let's see how things will span. So then with that, I think we are almost at the end of our conversation. It was fantastic talking to you, Koelia, for giving a perspective on how the AI agents, as well as how do you look into creating a deployment across a large organization with very different frameworks for each and every stage. I'm sure the listeners, the audience would find it enormous value. So thanks a million for your time, Koyelia. Yeah,
Thank you so much, Shankar. It was great interacting with you and very interesting questions. And I wish the startups all the very best. I think time has proven that the big players and startups are now equal because of the democratization which this agentic AI has brought in. So, we all the best to the startups and all the best to the freshers because they are the future and they are the ones who should be very confident about it. So, thanks.
thank you, Koyelia.